All right, guys. Welcome to session 4. Playing in the kingdom of Mysticka. Now, where we left off, if you guys recall, what you see here is that little run-in with the goblins, but we made it to Blueport, and I basically gave you guys basically the names of all the taverns and inns you could go to, and coincidentally, you guys chose the Sapphire Cup, which is a common quality inn. It's a 2-story inn composed of timber and brick. And Rancis is the innkeeper. And as you guys, if you recall, when you found a table, and there was this music that started to play, and Erlon, you recognized the tune as one that you had practiced many, many times before from your mentor, Thomas. And you glance over, and you see Thomas over there playing on his flute. That same tune, just ever so perfectly, just an excellent performance. And I'm sure your eyes go wide with surprise.
It's the most beautiful music he's ever heard.
Yeah, just an amazing performance.
Well, just because he sees him, he's happy he's alive.
You look at Ghoul and you see his jaws just dropped open, and he's just staring at Thomas, not really knowing what to say. He's just in complete surprise.
So I'm going to edge my way to the front of the crowd and make sure I get his attention when he's playing. Not interrupt the performance, but make sure he sees me.
Okay.
Because I want to contact him when he's done.
Okay. As you work your way through the small little crowd of people, there's a lot of tables in the common area that we're at. There's a lot of gaming going on. There's a lot of sounds of laughter. There's a sound of this music. There's sounds of people in the recesses of the room, cheering away as some people are, winning some money, and others are losing it. But you work your way through the crowd, and Thomas meets your eyes, but he quickly looks away. And he's just focused on his performance. And he's just playing the flute. And I didn't create a map or anything for this, so you have to use your imagination. But you're about 25 feet away from Thomas. He's in front of the hearth, and there's a bunch of people kind of gathered around with chairs, just listening to the music. From the beads of sweat that are kind of on his brow, you can tell that he must have been performing. He's been performing for quite a while.
I'm going to scan the area around him and see if there's any people that I see that may look like people guarding him, or I'm just, something seems a little fishy here. So I don't know if it's a perception check you want me to make or what, but I really want to try and focus on, maybe I see some guards, maybe I feel like he's being forced to play, or I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a little weird that he wouldn't even meet my eye for very long.
Why don't you go ahead and make, I don't know, is insight maybe an appropriate skill here? I think insight is if, I guess, you want to figure out if someone is lying or trying to be deceitful.
Okay.
To you. So I don't know if, do you think... Well, actually, you're wanting to focus on other people, not necessarily on Thomas, right? So you're looking around the room. So yeah, let's do a perception.
Okay. All right. Oh.
Wow.
Ouch.
Okay. Why don't you also roll an insight? You think so? From time to time, spending some time around Thomas, you've kind of learned that he has somewhat of a nervous tic. By the way, is that 13 plus? Oh, okay. So that's a 16. Okay.
Yeah, I have jack of all trades. So yeah.
Yeah.
16.
So you notice that he kind of bites the corner of his lip a little bit as he is playing the flute. Even though he kind of bites his lip a bit, just like this, you notice he doesn't even miss the tune at all. Like, it's still flawless. But it's just that little thing that you kind of picked up on, that he feels nervous. Now, whether that being nervous is in part because maybe we showed up, or someone in the crowd, or maybe he's just really trying to do a really good performance. Maybe he's nervous about that.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Okay.
So I guess we sit there. Definitely we don't want to interrupt his performance.
No.
At least Ghoul doesn't. He gets done with his playing. And you see him go around the long side against the wall where there's a table there with a chair. And there are a few belongings just sitting on the chair. But he picks them up. And you see him walk over, grab his stuff, and he puts them on, a little pack that he has, and a lute. And he stays around the outside of where we're sitting. He doesn't even come near us at all. He doesn't even meet our gaze. And now you're thinking maybe he didn't recognize you. I don't know how long it's been since you've seen Thomas, but he doesn't recognize. You're assuming he didn't maybe recognize you because he's not paying you any attention whatsoever. And you see him walk over to a barmaid and whisper something in her ear, and make another perception. Okay, you definitely notice a gold coin slip out from his sleeve and into this girl's hand. And with that, he goes up. He goes up around the back. So there's like the main common area, but then there's like these kind of rooms that are adjoining to the common area. And he walks around the back towards... Well, you don't know where. You've never been in this inn and tavern before, so you lose sight of him.
Okay.
But you then notice this barmaid that he has been speaking to walks over and grabs a couple of mugs of ale, and she grabs them, and she's looking around the room, looking for something.
I'm going to make my way toward her.
Okay. And now the rest of us, Theron and Deadeyes, of course, you've never met this Thomas fellow before. You don't know what he looks like. We have not said anything yet, but you definitely have noticed Erlon seems uneasy. He got up out of his chair and he's moving through the crowd, and he was staring at some guy, the guy who was playing at the flute. And he's approaching a barmaid, and you're not sure what's going on. And Ghoul, he's watching to see what Erlon is doing. Not saying anything yet. So... you approach the barmaid, and she's this, very good-looking, nicely, clean-looking brunette girl who has these greenish eyes, and she looks up at you, and she just gives you a big smile. And she doesn't say anything to you, but you notice that she's glancing over at the table where... basically the rest of us sat down. She keeps looking over there that way.
And I say, who was that man playing? He played wonderful music.
She says, oh, that is Thomas. He has started to play here in the past week.
Does he play every night?
He has been, yes. He's brought in the crowds, must say. Rancis made an excellent decision bringing Thomas here, or letting Thomas play here.
And I pull out a platinum coin and kind of twirl it in my fingers.
A platinum?
Yes.
Mr. Moneybags here.
And I say, is there any chance that you could show me what room he's in? I would love to talk to him more about his music.
And she looks very uneasy, and she looks at you, and, well...
And as she gets uneasy and kind of looking me up and down, I show my shawm that I have, my little shawm flute, and I kind of pull it out. I say, I'm a fellow musician. I'm really interested in his art.
Yeah, why don't you make a persuasion check?
Okay.
Yeah. She
16.
says, did you study with Thomas and, eyeing your instruments?
No, I'm just a lover of the arts. And I love to meet other people who are as good as he is. I'd love to learn some things from him.
And she says, well, I suppose so. And she's looking you up and down. She doesn't think you're too threatening at all. You seem like a pretty friendly, nice guy. So she says he's staying in room 5, up the stairs. And she points over towards the stairs, but now where she's pointing is not at all where you lost sight of Thomas.
Okay.
And the rest of us sitting at the table, we see that Erlon is now talking up this barmaid.
I give her the platinum and thank her for her time.
And her eyes go wide, and she says, "Good sir, what?" It seems like she saw the coin, but she didn't realize that it was actually, a platinum piece. Maybe she thought it was a silver or something. But her eyes go wide, and she says, "Sir, I can't take this. This is too much."
I say, it's a gift for your beautiful eyes.
She says, "Well, if you need anything the rest of the night, you just let me know."
Thank you. And then I'm going to kind of edge over to where he disappeared and see if I can see kind of where he went.
Okay. You edge over there, and of course you're glancing at the table where we're sitting, but you notice that the 2 mugs of ale that she has in her hands, she walks over to the table where we were sitting, and she puts them down in front of Ghoul. And she leans down and says something to Ghoul that you can't make out because you're too far away and there's too much noise. But she says something to Ghoul. And Ghoul nods his head and looks all around. Now, us at the table, we see this barmaid come over, and she has this ale. We haven't ordered anything yet, but she sets these 2 mugs of ale down and whispers something in Ghoul's ear. Basically, she says to Ghoul, room 5 at midnight.
Oh, I screwed up, didn't I?
No, it's fine. You're just curious.
No, I just wasted
Ghoul nods, and she just walks away.
As she's walking away, I yell out, say, "I haven't ordered yet."
And now, do you do that in her mind, or?
No. I think I'm coherent enough so that I'm just yelling out at this point.
Okay, and she turns around and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I have to get this other table some drinks first, if I may. I'll be right back, and I'll take your order." And she says, "You in for a hot meal?"
I'll nod and say, "Be on your way then. I'll wait here."
Okay. Theron, do you have anything to say?
Yes. He actually does. So he's gonna ask the bar maiden, or whatever. When is the next, what do they call it? Song? I guess that's gonna be the next bard that's gonna be playing.
And she looks around and she says, "Oh, probably about 15 minutes."
He's like, and so Theron says, "Good, that's give me plenty of time." And then he stands up and he's gonna find himself the highest place he can stand. He's gonna begin his story.
And at this point, she had actually taken a few steps closer back towards the table, when Deadeye spoke out, haven't even ordered yet. And she cocks an eyebrow, and she looks at you guys, she says, "What is he doing?"
As he's standing up, you see Deadeyes. He just puts his head in his hands, just shaking his head back and forth, looking down at the table.
And Ghoul he doesn't say anything, but he just grunts. Nah. Like he likes to do. Now, Erlon, you had said, at this point, you're where you lost sight of Thomas. And you look around the corner, and you see a room. I mean, there's a door, but you can kind of see through the door. There are these swinging doors, and it appears to be the kitchen.
Okay.
And you see no sign of Thomas. Yeah.
I know where he's staying, and obviously don't know what she said to them, but I'm going to go find out what she said to them. Because I obviously saw her whisper.
Yep, you saw her say something to Ghoul, and he nodded.
Yeah. It turns out he got the same information I did for a lot cheaper.
Yep. Yeah. So...
All right. Well, I'm
you
going to
make
head
your
back
way
to the table then.
Now, as you're walking back towards the table, you see Theron get up and starts walking towards the hearth.
And I look. I'm a little worried because I have a pretty good idea what he might be doing.
Yep.
In the crowd
And
with his brother.
As you get closer, you see Ghoul. He's looking around and he sees you. And
I'm going to go try and intercept him.
Oh, you're going to try to intercept Theron?
Yes.
Okay.
Intercept him before he gets there.
You'll have to hurry a bit.
Okay.
He definitely has a head start.
I'm going to make a quick step over there. I'm going to dash.
Okay, Theron, you're almost right up to the hearth, and you're about to turn around, and you're kind of clearing your throat a bit under your breath, And as you turn around, you see Erlon just right there standing right in front of your face.
And I whisper to him, don't draw attention to our group. It's a bad idea right now. It could mean our lives.
And Theron says, "Well, how else am I supposed to find my brother's killer if I can't even mention it to anyone?"
Well, you'll never find your brother's killer if you're dead, I say, and I turn around and walk back to the table.
Decisions. What are you going to do, Theron? You going to listen to Erlon, or are you going to tell your life story?
Hell no, I ain't gonna listen to him. I'm getting out there and seeing this bad boy. Yes.
Okay, so you clear your throat as you see the backside of Erlon as he walks away, and Erlon, you kind of half expected Theron to be right behind you, and as you take your seat, you look right as Theron begins to speak, and you just kind of cringe on the inside, and you remember your own voice back in Weaveshire when you were telling Deadeyes and them about liabilities, and that just comes ringing back into your mind, and
I turn to Ghoul and I say, we should have let the goblins kill that bastard.
And Ghoul actually chuckles, and he can't help but smile and laugh at that. And Darren, so what do you say? You start giving your discourse.
Well, he's gonna try to get everyone's attention. So he's gonna stand up there. He's gonna try to quiet them all down. Maybe say attention, and then he's just gonna sail away on his story, man.
Okay. So where do you start in your story this time?
You really want me to do the whole dialogue, or
No.
okay.
Just explain where do you start and where do you end?
He'll probably start at the beginning, but he's gonna skip a lot of the steps.
Okay, so you start explaining how you were
maybe how close I was to my brother, all the things we did with each other, how much I loved him, whatnot, and then I'm gonna get right to the part where pretty much an old bastard kills him in.
Right.
I'm gonna say his name, and right when I say his name, I want to do a insight check, see if I notice anything in the crowd.
Okay, go for it.
Like, do you want me to just skip right to that part? Oh, insight check. Okay.
Yeah,
right,
the insight check. Yep.
Right on.
Now, during this whole discourse, Erlon, you were going to talk to Ghoul. So go ahead, do your check.
All right. Oh.
Yeah, you
Brother, this way.
You don't notice anything, but a man does kind of yell out at you, and he has a confused look on his face. You do notice that. And he says, "What's the moral of the story? I don't get it."
So the moral of the story. I guess Theron is going to say, the moral of the story is, I'm not going to rest until my brother's killer is found, until I put his head through a wall.
And he looks confused. He's like, "Wait, this is a real story? You say this stuff actually happened to you?"
And he says, "Aye, it is all true."
And he shifts uncomfortably in his chair, mainly because he thought you were just telling a fictional tale, and he didn't realize that what you were saying was the truth. And he just kind of squirms down into his chair and looking around all uncomfortably.
Right on. Do I notice anything else?
No.
All right. Well, Theron's going to go... Is there another table maybe next to the one that... I'm trying to remember. Jared's character ate... Sorry, I'm...
Erlon?
Erlin. There we go. Is there a table next to Erlin that's maybe empty?
No, it's full.
Everything's all taken. All right. Well, I'm just going to go sit back at the table then where I was at.
Okay. Now, during this whole little performance that Theron did, what do you say to Ghoul?
Say, what did the barmaid tell you?
And he just whispers and says, "Room 5 at midnight."
I kind of chuckle. I go, "Damn it. I just paid her a platinum for that information."
Yeah. And Ghoul says, "Why did you do that?"
I was trying to get her to tell me what room he was staying in. I didn't realize she was going to come over and tell us.
And he says, "Erlin, for a plat, I think anybody would tell you anything you want to know."
Well, yeah, that was the idea.
Yeah.
Deadeye sees these two kind of whispering to each other, and
Yep.
he nods towards them and says, what's going on?
Am I on the other side of him?
Yeah.
I'm not sitting next to him, right?
Deadeye's is sitting to the left of you. Ghoul is sitting to the right of you.
Oh, okay.
And then Theron is next, in between Ghoul and Deadeye's.
Well, he will be, yeah.
Yeah.
So I lean over to Deadeyes and kind of explain what had happened, that Thomas had got caught up with this other guy, and there was death the family was killed at that farm, and that we were looking for Thomas and this other farmer. But the idea is we were looking for Thomas. We wanted to know what happened to him because there was blood and there were zombies and all that at the farm. So this is the guy who we were looking for. The whole reason why we were coming here is looking for him. And now we've seen him, but it seems like he wants to meet us at midnight, not right now. He doesn't want to talk to us right now. So something's afoot. We got to
Yep.
be very careful, I say, because we're dealing with a assassins guild here.
Crimson Shadow.
Yeah. Now, at this time, we were talking this whole time, like you guys were saying this.
Yeah, we've heard the story of his 1,000 times.
Yeah, so at this point in time, Theron now sits into the chair as he finished his little spiel. And, Theron, you just noticed that everyone else at the table is seemingly lost in some other conversation going on. Not really paying you any attention.
That is all good. I think he's hungry now. That was a long speech he gave.
Yep. Oh, and at this time, the brunette barmaid comes back and takes our orders. Basically order off of their very short menu.
Right on.
Order some hot food, some drinks, and she leaves back towards the kitchen area to put in the order. And so now we're left to ourselves again to speak. And as we begin to speak, there's a clap and an applause of a bunch of people from around the room. And we look over, and there's this young-looking man who, with this very blondish hair and blonde eyebrows, just get up, Theron, where you were at the hearth, and he's strumming his lute. And it's the beginning few measures of this tune that he starts playing. Apparently seems to be a local favorite because the crowd is just really loving it. But he just starts playing, and then he starts to sing while he's playing some tune. So that's going on in the background as we continue our discussion. So,
okay, so I'm going to turn back to Erlin, and I'll say, so you thought he was dead, right? And he's not dead? This Thomas?
We didn't know for sure. That's what we came here to find out. We thought there might be a possibility of that, yes. But our hope was to find him like you did, alive.
Or captured, Ghoul says.
So this Crimson Shadow gang, they didn't kill him, but something doesn't seem right.
Well, normally he would have come over and greeted me right after his performance and not shrunk away into the crowd and went to the kitchen. He'd have come up and talked to me. I lived with the guy for a while. I've known him since I was a child.
Yeah.
When he helped me become a bard.
You see Ghoul over there just nodding his head in agreement to everything that Erlon's saying.
Well, I intend to get pretty deep in a number of ales here tonight, but if you guys want any help, I'll be happy to come along just in case things go south.
We would love your company. You've proved to be a great asset in battle.
All right.
And Ghoul grunts in agreement. Feeling left out, Theron?
No, I was
kidding.
just thinking. But yeah, go ahead.
What you thinking? Is there something you want to ask? Something you want to say?
I just realized I'm like half naked. I don't have a robe on.
Yeah.
Because, so I'm like Jersey Shoring it around there. Probably go buy some clothes. Heck yeah.
Which probably made your performance even better.
Yep.
Yeah. That explains why that patron was so confused about your story. He's like, I don't get it. Where's the punchline?
Heck yeah. He'll just go and buy something tomorrow, the next day.
Okay.
Go get a shirt.
So, basically using this barmaid as our liaison, we secure rooms. How does Erlon, you're paid in full with that plat you gave her. She feels a little bit guilty by taking that much money off of a guy that just wanted to know the room number of a fellow bard and musician. But how's a gold sound to everyone for a room for the night and the meal? Actually, let's make it 2 gold and just for plenty of drinks for the night and everything else.
All right.
And tip.
I'm going to get an extra gold's worth of ale, so 3 for me.
Excellent. Okay. So it's about, with that message, basically, room 5 at midnight. We have about 3 hours until midnight. So what do you guys want to do? Do you want to just sit and enjoy the music and enjoy the meal and just relax from the long journey? Or do you want to try to get into some of these gaming, these games going on around the tavern, or start our own game?
I'm kind of being a little cautious. So I'm really looking for people that are paying more attention than they should to our group. And so, yeah, we might be hanging out, playing games, or doing whatever.
Okay.
I'm constantly scanning the crowd, looking for somebody who's paying a little too much attention to us.
Excellent. Make another perception check.
All right.
Man, there's just too much clamor, too much buzzing, going on with the music, and people just kind of, clapping, getting into the music, and there's even some lines that this man starts to sing like very, very well, but the crowd just sings the chorus along with him. And
I have a +6 to perception, and I'm rolling crappy.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I tried at least.
Oh well. So yeah. So we're just gonna chill, just relax, and just kind of be wary.
Right on.
All right. Well, night goes on. Deadeyes, why don't you make a Constitution check?
He did say he was going to get into the ale.
He did.
Yep. Getting hammered. Yeah. Oh.
Okay. You definitely you feel like you can down probably a few more mugs of ale. The stuff is pretty light.
I'll get the attention of the barmaid and be like, "Hey, this stuff's kind of weak. Got anything better?"
And she says, she looks at you up and down. She says, well, actually, let me find out if they do.
Our warlock thinks he's a dwarf.
Well, we got some, what rumor has it, some really old dwarvish stout. No one likes the stuff. It stinks like smelly feet, but if you think you can take it.
I'll give it a go.
Okay. And she says, stuff is fairly hard to get, so, it's a gold per mug.
Seems pretty expensive for stuff nobody wants, but whatever.
Well, that nobody wants except for people like you who have something to prove.
I actually do laugh out loud at that.
Do you want to try one mug?
Yeah. Send
Okay.
one over.
Okay, make a Constitution check with disadvantage.
Oh, my. He does realize he's going to be no good to us if he's drunk, right?
Yeah, this is what Deadeyes does, though, to cope.
Yeah. Well, I probably would, too.
Holy crap!
Wow.
Well,
Wow.
You
you're
guys know
drinking
Mysticka,
this
right?
mug, and you're cringing just because the taste is actually not very good at all. It's definitely old, but it's just, you feel like that there's something off about this liquid that is, claiming to be this dwarvish stout. But you put the mug down and, you call her over and you point at the glass and you say, another one of those. Or if you do you?
I'm impressed.
Based on, I think
very
based on my experience with that, I'm not gonna. I'm like, stuff's just crap.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely think it's crap.
I'll say that doesn't taste very good. You have any good old rum?
No rum. Whoa. She says, oh, we're all out of that. Like, that's a popular drink here on the ports.
Yeah. All right. I'll just go back
Sorry,
to the.
we're expecting a shipment in a couple days.
Yeah, I know all about shipments.
She says,
All
oh,
right.
do you? And she looks at you curiously. She says, are you a merchant?
And just slightly annoyed by her actual interest, I kind of say, I guess you could call me a merchant. I
interrupt and say loudly, of course he is. We just brought some ale in tonight. And I say it very loudly.
Very
and
nice.
that is just kind of like shifts his eyes over to Erlon and like shifts like kind of with a quizzical look, and then looks back at the barmaid and says, what he said.
And she nods and says, first time to Blueport? She's looking around at the rest of us and kind of eyeing, she's more eyeing Ghoul than anything else. But,
Nope, I've been here many times. Sailed many of the seas. No stranger to ports.
and then she looks at Ghoul and she says, what about you? You don't say much, do you? And he just grunts. And he says, I've been in the patrols down south, and he points over to a symbol that's on his cloak, marking his status and rank in the Weaveshire countryside militia. And she looks at it and nods and, accepts that. And then she looks at Theron and she says, so what's your deal? Are you walking around without a shirt on? You're not impressing anybody.
He gives a glare at Ghoul, and he says, that wasn't my intention. I was trying to save someone.
She says, oh, are you a cleric? Are you a priest?
He says, hardly either of those. I'm just... are monks known in the kingdom?
Well, not really. It rare. Like I would say some cities would probably hear of some of these orders, but definitely not that common. But she says to you, she looks at you, she says, oh, wait, right, that's right, the story with the monastery. Gotcha, and she winks at you.
And he just looks at her back and he says, I think I'll have what he's having. And he gestures at Deadeye.
And she says, that costs a gold.
And Theron says with a bit of attitude, would I ask for something if I don't have the money to pay for it? And then he tosses out the gold at her.
Oh, and she fumbles the coin and it falls on the floor, and she bends down and picks it up.
And I say, don't mind my friend here. His brain's left with his shirt.
And she looks at you and just says, "Coming right up," and she's just really annoyed with you.
Hey, I have a
And-
-1 to charisma, man.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. Theron's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, she comes back. She comes back with this mug of this foul-smelling brew.
Hey, while
And,
she's gone, I'm gonna cast Minor Illusion of a shirt on him.
Okay. Just a normal shirt, not like bright pink or something.
Yeah, just a normal shirt.
Okay, just a
Oh,
normal
no,
shirt.
you gotta make it a dainty shirt. You gotta make him look funny. Come on.
Yeah, so we see Deadeye's mutter something, and we look over at Theron. All of a sudden, just kind of forming out of nothing, we see what appears to be a shirt.
Can I use Arcana to see what he casts?
Sure.
14.
Yeah, you're pretty sure that it was some sort of minor illusion spell.
All right. Okay.
In fact, you kind of see some things that definitely are a little bit wrong with the illusion.
Sure.
As Theron is moving and stuff, there's like no sound coming from it whatsoever. Like you can kind of tell it's not really there. But but yeah, there's this normal shirt there, and she comes back and she says, "Well, that's much better." And she puts the mug down, and then she says, "Anything else I can get for the rest of you?"
I say, I
we've
think we're
had-
good.
Okay, great. So this bard is still up there, he's cycling through his show, his act, and he's still going. So, Theron, why don't you roll a Constitution check, disadvantage?
Advantage. Right
Yep.
on. Oh, wow.
This is some weak crap.
Yep. He looks at Deadeye's and he says, "You're right."
No
this is some weak-
freaking
It's
way.
just junk.
I can't believe that just happened.
You know what's going to suck is once we get in combat,
Right.
you're not going to see rolls like that anymore.
Nope.
Wow. Yeah, you slam the mug down, and you're just like kind of cringing. You're like, ugh, it tastes horrible. And you just shrug, and you're like, I think this stuff has lost its potency, but it definitely, its taste is horrendous.
I don't know. What's everyone else doing? That will determine what Theron does next.
And I turn to Ghoul and I say, I think I'm losing my respect for Dwarven Ale.
And Ghoul says, I'm not sure that's, really good quality dwarven ale. And he puts emphasis on the word dwarven.
He says, and he whispers to Ghoul, he says, for all we know, it could be piss water out of the latrine.
And he grunts in agreement. And so with that, so we're just socializing, enjoying each other's company, and having these drinks and stuff. But it starts approaching, the time goes on about 11 o'clock. The bard calls it a show. People stand up and, they clap and they cheer and they're like tossing coins his way, mostly silver coins. But, it adds up. And he collects the money and he disappears into the crowd. And there's just the crackle of the fire and not much else going on. Some of the patrons are starting to clear out and head to their rooms. Half of the place is empty at this point, but we have about another hour until midnight. So unless one of you stop me, we'll fast forward till around midnight.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm done.
Okay, so the night wears on. You're not really getting the buzz that you were hoping, Deadeyes. But, maybe the next place.
It's always the next place.
Yep. And maybe next time they'll actually have some rum in stock and, your drink of choice. But around midnight, the place is mostly empty. It's pretty much just us still sitting there, bunch of empty mugs sitting on the table, and we decide to either A, head up to our rooms or head towards Thomas's, room 5. So my question for you guys is, who all is going to Thomas's room? Are we going to go as a group, or?
Darren is just going to go to his room unless someone else wants him to go. I mean, this shit's kind of done, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. The only thing is, Theron, that Thomas, you're pretty sure that Thomas guy, walked out of the room. You're not sure he heard your life story.
Oh,
but
that's true.
you might just be maybe tired and just maybe want to go the next day and maybe talk to him, or...
Actually, that is an excellent point. I have yet to question Thomas. Yeah, I'll go.
Well, I'll just throw it out there. Either you can go to your room, or I don't know if maybe you would really... Well, we know this Thomas guy, so I don't know if you'd really think that he knows anything about this Lyric guy.
Well, I never know, so I try. I think he'll investigate this Thomas fellow.
Okay. Deadeyes? You just going to go to your room, or is there a reason that you would feel like you would probably want to join in and hear what's going on?
Well, I was invited along, so I'll come along.
Okay. Erlon invited you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So all 4 of us, we get our things and we go up the stairs and walking down a hall, then it cuts to the left, and we're walking down this hallway and we're just looking at these numbers on the doors, and we approach door number 5, which is on the left, and we, Erlon, I guess you're in the lead, you rap on the door.
All right.
And we hear a noise of a lock clicking from within inside the door. And the door opens just a crack. And you see that it's Thomas back behind the door. And he sees you, and you see his gaze shift past you at Ghoul, who's second in line. And then he just kind of glances back behind, and he has this worried look on his face all of a sudden. He says, "Who are they?"
They're friends. You can trust them as much as you can trust us.
And you see him narrow his eyes as he's contemplating. And he swings open the door, and he motions us all inward. And he says, "Quick, be quick about it." And so we hurry on in, and he shuts the door. We're inside this small little room with this, nice little bed with this dresser. We see the salute up, leaning up against the wall. He has this flute on the dresser. Now, Erlon, at this point, because you have a much better look, these instruments that he has are definitely not his favorite ones. You recall his favorite lute was actually in his house, which he left. But his flute that he always takes with him, the flute that he has on this dresser is not his most favorite precious flute that he always plays with. It's some other make. But we hear him scramble to lock the door. And he turns around and he says, "Erlon, my boy." He says, "How are you?" And he says, "Ghoul." He says, "It is so good to see you."
And I say, "What the hell happened at the farm?"
And he says, and he looks down at the floor and he says, "The farm." And then he says, "Wait, how did you know to find me here?"
We went to the farm looking for you because you weren't around for a while, and we actually found that the family had been turned into zombies. And so we slew the zombies and buried the family, and then went back to town and tried to figure out more information on who you're with, and gathered some information that possibly the Crimson Shadow had something to do with it. We came here searching for you.
And as you were explaining all that, you see like his eyes seem to glisten with some wetness that wasn't there earlier. And he just looks down and, he kind of coughs a bit. And he says, I did not think that you would come looking for me. I guess I underestimated your resources. And says, Ghoul, why have you come? And Ghoul says, I knew that you were in trouble. I couldn't just leave you. He says, I'm afraid that you guys should just go back to Weaveshire. You need to go back before you guys get yourself in trouble. Says, you shouldn't be seen with me. Says, it's too dangerous.
And so I say, what's going on? How can we help? I will not leave.
And he puts his hand over his head, and he's just like, Erlon, like, it's much too dangerous. In fact, it sounds like you know too much already. You know about the Crimson Shadow. Says, it's safer if you just go back to Weaveshire and live a normal life.
When have I had a normal life, Thomas?
And you see him nod and says, you got me there. And Deadeyes, actually, no. He says, how much do you know?
To me?
Yeah.
Say, not a lot. We were attacked by a group of Crimson Shadow on the roadway.
And his eyes go wide and he interrupts you. He says, what?
Yeah, they came after us. They hired some people from Weaveshire to some locals there, as well as some Crimson Shadow guys, we assume, and attacked us. And we were able to slay most of them. Some of them got away.
He says, most of them? Who got away? Which ones?
Some guy with a bow that was shooting at us from a distance. We couldn't really see his face.
I will describe him, the guy in the red.
Yeah, I didn't really see him.
Yeah.
So
And
I'll pick up.
then Thomas looks at you and says, who are you? You have an odd look about you.
So I'm a merchant.
What's your name, boy? And now Thomas is definitely older, right? Like he's probably in his upper 40s. Definitely in this time, he would be considered an elder in most places. But, yeah.
I say, my name is Wick, but most call me Deadeyes on account of, my eyes.
And he looks at you and he says, Deadeyes Wick? The Deadeyes Wick? The tales of the ships and the gnome captain? What was his name? Bottle Knock or something?
Something like that. Good old Captain Gobbledygook.
And he says, I must be some story of how you got wrapped up with these two, as he's, gesturing towards Erlon and Ghoul. And then he looks at and he says, huh?
We were just happened to be going in the same direction, and it was just safer to be together, and then there was a lot of stuff that happened on the way. Some people died. We didn't. And here we are.
And he turns to you, Erlon. I thought you said they were friends. You don't know these people.
Battle turns people you don't know into friends.
Even Ghoul is nodding in agreement at that and lets out a grunt. And
you learn who you can trust in battle.
Yeah, and Thomas looks at Theron. He says, what about you? How'd you come into all this?
He said, I'm just a drug mule. No, I'm joking. He'll say that. Similar to Dead Eyes over there, he says. I pretty much helped him carry out his cargo all the way to Blueport and fought the same battles, and here we are.
So who are you? What's your story?
Oh, we're gonna be here forever, I think.
Jedi says,
Well, he is a bard, you know, and there's these two. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Theron perks up a bit, realizing he has yet to hear his lifelong story. So he says, allow me to start from the beginning of who I am and why I'm here. And of course, he's going to...
Ghoul clears his throat and says, is now really the time for that?
Theron looks at Ghoul as good a time as any.
And Ghoul lets out a yawn.
He's like, so Theron just says, fine, I'll do the beginning and I'll skip to the end if that makes you happy. And so he's gonna basically sum up the story and tell Thomas it.
Okay.
And then of course he's gonna make the insight check.
Go for it.
Right on. Here we go. Come on. You sick son of a bitch. Freaking 10 again. Whatever.
Well, Thomas says, that's quite a story, boy. It's like, where'd you say this monastery was?
Crap, it was in the mountains. I gotta look where real quick.
Yeah, it's just in the mountains south of...
Alright.
Yeah, as if you're going on your way to Temria. So Temria is the
Right.
neighboring kingdom of Lady Luck. But,
Yep.
yeah. And he says, I've not heard of any monasteries around that area. Says, what proof do you have of... Do you have any proof of what you say is true? Or people are just expected to believe your word of mouth?
Theron shifts a bit uncomfortably. He looks around. He feels like he can probably... He does that trust issue thing, that is a swap. You know what? I'll give it a roll. I'll just say 1 through 10 he doesn't, 10 and up, or 11 and up he does. Alright, he says... He whips out the trinket dagger that killed his brother and he says, this is the only proof that I need. And of course, after telling him the story, he should know what that trinket is.
Yeah. And he says, he looks at it and says, the dagger that this Lyric fellow used to kill your brother?
And he says, a bit down, yes, this is it.
And he says, may I hold it? May I look at it?
He looks at Thomas, and he says, no offense, but the only one who's going to be holding this dagger is Lyric when I stab it into his heart. And he puts it back.
Okay.
Yep, that's it. That's all we got, man. Heck yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay. So you put it back away. Not wanting any other person to, like you described, touch the dagger unless it's Lyric who's going to be feeling the pain of the dagger pierce his flesh. And Thomas gives a small little shrug and he says, well, I wish you luck on your quest. And
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Did Theron describe the people in the cloaks? The white
all dressed in white. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and nothing at all.
No.
All right, right on. Okay, that's it.
Are you sure you don't want to let him hold the dagger?
I'll hold the dagger if he wants to look at it.
Nah, you already put it away. So
Yep.
okay, we're past that point now.
Yep, we are.
Okay, so Thomas then says, "Well, this definitely complicates things. If the Crimson Shadow were after you," and then he looks curiously. Were you going around town asking questions?
Here? No.
No, in Weaveshire.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ghoul says, well, of course.
We didn't
And-
know any better at the
Yeah.
time.
He shakes his head and he says, not good that the hands of the Crimson Shadow stretch all the way to Weaveshire. And he says, this definitely complicates things. And he starts thinking, he says, well, seems you're already knee-deep in this mess. I might as well fill you in. And he says, Erlon, you know Liam.
Yeah, he's the bastard that started all this, I assume.
And he nods and he says, technically, yes, but he was doing the right thing.
Liam doing the right thing since when?
And he says, and he tilts his head and he says, I'm afraid you don't have all the information, Erlon. And he says, you know of Liam's gambling problem that he had.
Of course. I figured that's what got you into all this.
Not exactly. He says, Liam came to Blueport to meet with some shady character he didn't know the name of, but with some contact that he somehow was in arrangement with, for settling a gambling debt of his. However, when he was taken in to this house and waiting to speak to this person, he overheard a bunch of people talking, what he gathered to be bodyguards of this person. And he never did see their face, but he heard her voice. And these bodyguards were boasting and talking about changes that are going to be coming to the kingdom, and how the reconnaissance is almost complete, and that the names have been written in the book. Well, just so happened that this book Liam happened to see when he went in to speak with this woman. Needless to say, he snatched it as he was leaving, and he took it to his farm with the knowledge and the assumption that whatever was contained in that book was of detriment to the kingdom. Politicians, priests, political figures of importance in the kingdom, basically being at risk of being killed or assassinated, of some sort of evil scheme going on. And he thought it was his duty as a citizen of Mysticka to take this book, which contained this hit list in it, and to steal it, to foil their plans. Liam came to me for help because he wanted help in hiding this book. Well, through inspecting it, I found a few runes and inscriptions on the binding, and I found that this book could actually be concealed. And you could actually, with a command word, make this book change its appearance to be any other book. And he says we hid it at Liam's farm with all his other, belongings. But what we did not expect was that this woman, of course, realizing that the book coming up missing, she guessed that it was him. it was a dumb thing to do on his part, but he had good intentions. He felt like he was doing the kingdom a service by foiling the plans of this shady group called the Crimson Shadow. So the Crimson Shadow appeared to his farm when I was visiting Liam one day, and all hell broke loose. They started destroying everything, asking him where it was, and of course Liam would not divulge the location, and not even I knew the location of where he had placed this book. But I did tell him of the secret word on how he could change the appearance of the book. So they ransacked the place, tore everything apart, everything in shambles, and they took mostly everything and made a pile outside and burned it all. To my surprise, this book did not burn. In fact, the fire seems to have revealed its true appearance, and they pulled it from the ashes. And this book is completely black, and on the cover is a symbol of a skull with what looks like drops of blood in a circular fashion around the skull. And it says, I opened it to see what was in it, but I felt way too uncomfortable reading through the book. I decided it was in my best interest to just close it and just to hide it. And she recovered the book.
Can
And
I roll
so,
a religion check real quick? See
absolutely.
if I know that symbol.
Sure. Nope. You
Okay.
do not.
All right.
It's the Baldur's Gate game manual.
Yeah. So, Theron, make an intelligence check.
Not my best, alright.
We know.
Oh, that crap.
Oh my gosh.
Holy crap!
Yeah.
Living up to the reputation.
Yep.
Okay, well. Yeah. You might as well not even have rolled. So, okay. Moving on.
That doorbell really got to me.
So, he says it's very dangerous that she has this book. And I'm afraid that if they're allowed to do what they intend to with the information that's in this book, it's going to be very, very bad. He says, so Liam and I got captured, and we looked and saw as they slit the throats of his wife and their stable hand and their workers and, his boys. And then he saw this wicked woman raise up these bodies from death and turn them into zombies. And he said it was horrifying, Erlon. And he says, we were bound and shackled, and they transported us all the way to Blueport. At nights, I heard Liam scream as they tortured him to try to get information out of him of what he knew. And only through my persuasive abilities, I was able to persuade them to just let me go. Them thinking that I was just some fool caught in the mix with Liam and his gambling problems. So, you see, Liam did get me into this, but there is something much, much bigger about to happen. So, one, I intend to make enough money to buy back my instruments. Says, I just have that thing that people try to pass off as a flute over on that dresser. And you kind of chuckled to yourself at that because, he's definitely quite bitter that he no longer has his flute. And he says, they destroyed my flute in the fire. And he says, right now, I'm planning to try to book passage to Starport.
Why Starport?
He says, because that is where the witch was headed. Apparently, they have a
gone to any authorities about this.
They have a bigger base of operations in Starport. You know, at the nights when we're in the holding cell, there was much boasting by her men. And, you know, I took note, and he taps his head. And he says, the authorities, and he starts laughing. He says, Erlon, there is no telling how far the hand of this Crimson Shadow stretches. And he says, it sounds like it's even permeated Weaveshire. He said, no, much too dangerous to go to authorities. You don't know who you can trust. And he says, I intend to go to Starport and to take that book back somehow. Or destroy her in the process. He says, but you coming here and give me this information poses some problems. And he says, how much of a look did you get at whoever was shooting at you from the darkness, as you say?
I never saw him. Only he did. And I point to Deadeyes.
Says, and he looks at Deadeyes and he says, Deadeyes, you saw this person?
More or less. He was wearing a red mask.
And it says, did you notice anything odd, like the way that he walked, or any weird movements or behaviors in his movement or his demeanor whatsoever? Did you see any tattoos? Anything at all?
I don't remember. Did he have a limp? Or was that somebody else?
Dude, it was
Someone
so
else.
long ago, that play session. I hardly remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to have you roll an intelligence check for try to recalling that information, because you're trying to remember in your head when you looked, because you're the only one to see that person in the darkness shooting those arrows and pegging Erlon. So you're stretching your memory now. You're trying to recall, you know, man, I'm trying to think, right? So it's kind of like, you know, people trying to come up with a police sketch, you know, a few days after it happened. So go ahead, roll an intelligence check.
Nice.
Oh,
Wow.
very, very nice. You know, you're kind of drifting off into your thoughts for a moment, and all these images start flickering through your head. And that whole combat encounter starts replaying in your head, and how you looked over and you saw this figure just shooting arrows and then moving and staying in the darkness, thinking that they couldn't be seen. And then you remember something. You remember these gloves that this person is wearing, and out from these gloves, there was a whole bunch of hair, like black hair, sticking out from the glove.
Okay.
Really bushy black hair, like arm hair. And you never really thought anything about it now until you recall that information in your head just now.
I'll tell that to Thomas. Like, the only thing I really remember that was odd, he was rather hairy.
What color hair?
Black. Like
He
a
says,
raven.
interesting. And he says, and then you see what looks like a light bulb go off in Thomas's eyes. And he says, of course. And he says, I persuaded them to let me go. But I don't think they don't know what you guys look like. And I don't think they would know what you look like, especially being in Starport. He says, what if you guys were to go to Starport and to perform the heist? And more importantly, I should go back to Weaveshire with that person not knowing the information that I know now, and I'm going to try to root out the Crimson Shadow in Weaveshire and to find out who that is, and then to get information and spy on them.
Well, you're in luck. We're already going to Starport because they need rum. Or ale.
Yeah. And he says, what? You're already headed to Starport?
Indeed. I actually am sort of a merchant sometimes. I'm delivering a shipment of blue ale to an inn and tavern there. I've got a ship lined up, ready to go already.
And he says, Oren's Weaveshire Blue Ale. Weaver's Blue Ale. Good stuff, that is. Good stuff. And he says, basically to us, Erlon and Ghoul, this will be extremely dangerous that I ask of you to do this, but it just might be our best chance to throw a wrench in everything.
So you want us to steal the book or kill the witch? Or both?
Most importantly, the book, but both if required. And then you see him thinking, he says, no, kill the witch if you can. I'll never forget hearing Liam's screams as they tortured him to death. And Ghoul, of course having his halberd at his side, just runs his thumb along the blade of his halberd and just grunts and says, we can do that. And he looks at Erlon to see if you agree.
So yeah, let's do it. He'll never see it coming.
And then Thomas looks at you, Deadeyes, and says, so is there room on your vessel do you have a ship?
No, it's not my ship. It's a merchant ship. I imagine there's plenty of space on it.
He says, perhaps they can get passage with you.
Perhaps.
A merchant always needs his bodyguards, I say.
Absolutely, Thomas says. And he says, so then, I will leave on the morrow, and I will head back to Weaveshire. This is much unexpected. And he said, I will try to gather as much information as I can, and when you get back, then we will see about going to the proper authorities.
And I say, Thomas, do you need any money for supplies? You need anything so you can get home? You good?
He says, I think I've made enough in my week performing here. And he says, but if we need be, we'll go to Ariel herself.
Ariel.
Now Ariel is like the leader, like of the whole kingdom of Mysticka. Everybody knows who Ariel is. She's a prophet of Mysticka. And she's definitely, the leading prominent political figure. Consider her the president, basically.
Or a prophet of Mystra?
What's that?
You said she's a prophet of Mysticka or Mystra?
Mystra, yeah.
Oh, okay.
She's a prophetess of the Lady Mystra.
Okay.
But she's the main leader and ruler over the entire kingdom of Mysticka. So he's just saying if we need be, we'll go straight to her and seek audience with her.
Okay.
But we need to do what we can now and gather evidence and information.
And that's what we'll do. We'll get the book. We'll do our end.
Okay. Theron, what say you about all this? Are you feeling like, you're not so sure you want to get involved with something like this? You kind of just want to...
I mean, the people in the tavern, even as dumb as they were in Hillshire, wherever we were just at, Weave Hill. What was the last place we were at? Weaveshire.
Yeah.
As far as knowing his past and anyone there, so I don't think he really has any objections of trying another place.
Okay. Well, you do know there's, how many? There's at least 6 other inns and taverns in Blueport. But we know that we have about 2 days to go before that ship leaves. Depending on if there's some surprise arrivals, Deadeyes is supposed to report every morning, if you recall. Okay, so Thomas, satisfied at that, nods his head and says, well then, I must get some rest for the journey ahead. And Ghoul says to Thomas, be wary on the road back. There could be goblins set up around the road, attacking people. We were attacked. And Thomas says, goblins? This close? Says, well, that's not good. The patrol should be notified. And Ghoul nods and says, yes, the patrol they know. And he says, okay, then, I will keep that in mind. Says, thank you, Ghoul. And Ghoul, I really was looking forward to your visit. I suppose I should have left some sort of sign. But I didn't think it wise for anyone to try to follow me.
So before we leave, I walk up and I grab Thomas in an embrace and I say, I'm happy to see that you are well.
As is me, Ghoul says. As is me. Very glad that you're alive, good friend Thomas. And, handshakes and fist bumps all around, and we head to our individual rooms to basically spend the night. So,
There's
you know,
only
this
father figure my character has, so screw you, CJ.
yeah. Okay, so we spend the night. We reflect upon our adventures, and now we're level 3. And Thomas leaves that morning. We say our goodbyes, and yeah, he leaves. But Deadeyes, you go to the docks, and the captain there, says, "Oh no, we're not ready to leave quite yet. We're waiting on one more shipment. They should be in tomorrow."
Okay.
So, the morning after that, they're gonna double check the inventory and make sure everything's good to go, and then they're gonna set sail.
Do they have room for us?
Well,
For his bodyguard?
that's just the thing. So, Deadeyes, you probably go to the docks yourself to meet with the captain. I don't see why the whole entire party would go.
Sure.
Because you're just going to check in to see, if everything's all ready to leave.
Yeah.
But you definitely know of this plan of the rest of us basically coming along. So I don't know if you want to approach the captain yourself and maybe get passage, or... I mean, you do have this feature, this background feature, right, of the sailor, which is...
Yeah.
What's your feature? Is it...
Well, I can just basically book free passage whenever I need to for me and my party.
Yeah.
We just can't necessarily pick the time, but we've already got it kind of set now.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I'll basically say, like, it's just to clarify, as he's telling me about the ship not being ready to go yet, there will be plenty of room for my bodyguards, correct?
And it says, bodyguards, the ones that came into Blueport with you. Are they not headed back to Weaveshire?
Nope, they're coming with me. At least 2 of them are. I'm not sure about the 3rd, but I think we're all going together.
Well, as long as they're willing to help keep my ship safe. And this man's name, by the way, is Captain Balazar. He's this kind of rough and tumble type fellow, kind of stocky, but short, but he's stocky, but he just has like this massive 5 o'clock shadow going on where it always looks like he needs to shave, and his beard kind of coming out kind of rough. But definitely you've done business with him a few times. He's definitely a pretty good captain. He's very nice. Again, the ship is the Spraying Ogre is his ship, and he spent a massive amount of money on the ship, and he's a really successful captain, merchant ship, basically transporting goods throughout the kingdom to all the different port cities. His ship is easily like almost double the size of most other captain's ships. Like his ship is just pretty darn big. Which I think it's like 220 feet long.
Wow.
That is really big. Shit.
Yeah, and about 60 feet wide. So, it's a pretty good sized ship. And that's why he called it the spraying ogres, because it's this big hulking mass of a ship in the water, and when it hits those crests and those waves, it just sprays water everywhere. And so that's why he called it the spraying ogre. Yeah, so he says, yeah, bring them along as long as you're willing to help keep the ship safe and everything secure. Yeah, sounds good. There's about a crew of 16 people on the ship. And so, it takes quite a few men to basically run the ship.
Yeah, Jedis is pretty well aware of all that.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, and I have a raven with me. I forgot to mention. It's not actually a raven, but it hangs out in the form of a raven.
Okay. It's
I cast Find Familiar last night.
Oh. Okay. So, what, like these strange images in your head and whatnot, and you suddenly found that you had this strange, uncanny ability of summoning a spirit to bond with you. So, is it a raven then? So you have a bird perched on your shoulder, or?
Yeah, that's what it looks like right now.
Okay.
But it is not actually a raven. It's actually an imp. But the imp can take on the form of a raven.
Ah. Okay, so there appears to be a raven on your shoulder.
Right. It's kind of
Awesome.
like a parrot, only it's not a parrot. It's a raven.
Yep. Okay, so you head back to the inn, and we're there just, you went first thing in the morning, of course. A lot of people like to set sail as soon as possible in daybreak. But yeah, you speak with us, and you tell us that we got passage. And so we're pretty excited about that. And we basically have like another full day of pretty much anything. So anything you guys want to do this day? Theron, I'm sure you probably want to go around to different taverns in the evening when there's the most people and maybe tell your life story and see if you catch anything.
Yep, and I gotta buy a new robe.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead and look up in the player's handbook or whatever you can find and buy a robe.
Yeah.
We won't go ahead and spend time on that. Anything else someone wants to buy? I mean, is there anything else you guys want to try to spend your hard-earned cash on?
Not me. I only give platinum pieces away to beautiful barmaids. So.
Yep. I guess I don't really have a whole lot to spend, so
I don't either.
yeah.
There's not a lot I need except for some magical armor.
Yeah, who doesn't need that, right?
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm probably going to actually spend time with the captain, just swapping stories and stuff, and hearing about how he got his big ship and what he did that made him successful and everything.
Okay, excellent. So you spend most of the day on the spraying ogre, just keeping the Captain Balazar company.
Yeah.
Cool.
I do want to ask Deadeyes about this Captain Bobby Knock or whatever his name was.
Body Knock? On the Novara?
Yep.
I've never heard this story and seemed Thomas knew it.
Yeah, so this would be probably in the morning before you head back to the captain.
I did give your bio, by the way, but yeah.
Yeah, so Erlon asked you about this Captain Body Knock and what that's all about.
Okay. I will use my actor feat and mimic the voice of a rather impressive bard I heard once, and using a series of minor illusion cantrips, I will tell and show the story of Body Knock and the Novara. And up to like the point where we found the island, and then I'll probably just kind of leave it vague at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure I want to see what you saw on that island.
No, you probably, yeah. So you definitely feel uncomfortable going any, further past that point of you arriving to that strange island that changed your life forever. But yeah, so Erlon, there's quite this impressive, Deadeyes might make a pretty good bard someday. With all these illusions and his ability to act and to tell a good story.
I say, so you used to be a pirate, huh?
No. We're not a pirate. We're just an exploration vessel.
Yeah.
That's what all pirates say.
Pirates are outlaws. Okay.
I've stolen a few things myself in my time. I hold no judgment. We all do what we must to survive.
All right. So, Theron, you managed to visit. I'm going to fast forward to the evening and just kind of summarize what happens during the day. But Theron, you managed to visit 3 of the taverns.
Right on.
I'm going to ask you which 3 those are.
There was 2. Let's see. There was the poor taverns. There was the medium ones, and then there was the rich ones. Right? There was 2 mediums.
There's 3 common ones, and then there's 2 good, which are like more rich, and then there was 2 poor, and those were like in the poor part of the city.
Okay, so I think I'll finish with the remaining 2 of the Commonwealth taverns, and then I'll do one of the rich ones. Or I'll start at the rich one and then do the remaining.
Okay, so you go across the street to the Jester's Mug, and you give your story there. And go ahead and roll.
Inside. There we go, come on. Yeah, well, fuck you too. Alright, well, no.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. You don't notice.
On to the next one.
Okay, hold on. The next one is the Ruby Cask. That's down a couple streets.
Commonwealth?
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah,
Alright.
it's common. The Ruby Cask.
Alright. Insight story.
No.
No, I'm gonna make it one of these days.
Now,
Come on now.
you go into the Sorceress Badger. Now, the Sorceress Badger, you go in there, and as you start to get up to tell your, because there's a break in the performance, and this is your last stop, right? This is a really, really nice, it's fully made out of stone, and it is very, very nice. You can tell just from the dress of everybody in there. Everyone's just dressed really, really nicely. Like, they're all really well-to-do merchants or nobility-type folk. You even see a couple figures in this one, in the Sorceress Badger, that are wearing, symbols of Mystra, the Lady of Magic, and you're pretty sure they're prophets. And in addition, you also think you see someone over on one side of the table of the symbol of like a wave, and you're pretty sure they are a prophet of the god of water, Estitia. And, there's basically 2 followings in, especially in Blueport, being a port city. A lot of sailors and captains like to donate or give donations to this, Church of Estitia to try to, guarantee them safe passage. It's kind of more of a superstition, though. The truth is, Estitia doesn't give a crap about mortals, so, mortals don't know that, though. But then there's the prophets of Mystra, who are definitely always very nice, well-to-do, like, by nice, I mean, like, rich. So no doubt they would come to a place like this. But as you were getting up to give your spiel, the barkeep speaks out and says, what do you think you're doing? Because in this place, there's more of, instead of just being in front of a hearth, there's like a stage. Right? There's like a little makeshift stage there specifically for performers to do, and you're making your way up there, and the barkeep is yelling out, what do you think you're doing, lad?
And Theron replies, I'm about to tell a story. Would you like to hear it?
Tryouts are next week. Says, you come back then and try out. Get off my stage. And he snaps his finger, and he motions, and you see these two big guys coming over towards your direction.
All right. This is the barkeep that said it?
Yep.
So he's going to get off the stage and he walks over to the barkeep.
Okay.
Or begins to walk over there. Do they let me?
Well, the I guess you can call them bouncers. The bouncers aren't standing right. They're not standing like right next to him. So they were off on a different part of the room, and they were walking towards the stage. So if you walk directly towards him, you can certainly do so.
All right. So Theron's going to pull out a plat, and he says, I insist.
And he eyes you curiously, and he puts a hand up to his bouncers, and they stop, and of course they see the shiny coin in your hand. And he says, make it 2 of those, and I'll give you the stage for 10 minutes. Otherwise, you're out of here. Of course, you're in a very rich, place. So
this ain't a Commonwealth tavern?
no, you already did those. This is the Sorceress Badger. This is your last stop for the night.
All right. He says about a plat and 4 gold.
He snaps his fingers for the bouncers to come on over. Remember, your charisma sucks, dude. You really shouldn't be trying to
All right.
wheel and deal.
He just gives him the 2 plat then.
Okay, so he motions for his bouncers to back down, and he, mark off your 2 plat.
Yeah.
And then he gestures to the stage, and then he yells out and announces, everyone's attention, approaching the stage is, and he's motioning for you to, fill in the blank.
All right.
What's,
He says his name, Theron Everlast.
okay, and he says, Theron Everland performing, and
He says, I'm here to tell a story.
And he says, to tell a story. And he walks off, amused.
All right.
And you hear whispers in the crowds. Like, what is he doing up there? He doesn't even hold an instrument. What is he doing? What is he doing? Is he going to sing?
With that, I think 10 minutes is enough for him to get through his story.
Okay.
So he's going to tell it from the beginning.
Okay. So you tell it from the beginning, like you've done many, many times now. And you get to the part about the men in white and, basically walking in and seeing your brother dead. And go ahead and roll an insight.
Right on. Make this damn insight. Make it. Yes! Fuck yeah! Anyways.
Finally got a good roll.
Heck yeah. Damn right I make that roll.
Well, okay, so what you notice is this you're looking around the crowd as you finish your story, and you're like gauging the audience and stuff. And there's just kind of hushed, like there's whispers going on, which normally there's more of like silence as people are trying to figure out either one, what the moral of the story was, or two, like where's the joke, where's the punchline. But this time there's a bunch of whispers all the way around. And you notice that one of those prophets of Mystra,
Well, I wanted to use that insight.
she locks eyes with you, and it's this woman who has this almost like completely black hair and these brown eyes. And you lock eyes with her, and she motions you over to sit at her table.
Do I notice anything else?
No.
Nope. Just okay. Sure. I'll just sit over there.
And then you hear the barkeep get up, and he says, "Well, that was some tell." And so let's hear it for Theron, and there's just a few pats.
Was a good story.
Yeah, and there's more whispering and murmurs and stuff. And then the barkeep yells out for the next act and stuff, and this bard definitely like is wearing some sort of like makeup and like is completely done up in some sort of costume, and he's like has all these instruments, and he gets up and starts his show and his act. But you make it over to this table, and there's this woman, and she says, "Have a seat, please." And you sit down, right?
Sure.
And she says, "Please tell me, Theron, is it?"
And he says, "Aye, it is Theron."
"Please tell me, was that story true to the word?"
And he says, "Every last bit."
"That is so horrible. That is so horrendous. Who have you told about this?"
And he just
Here's how Theron
sort
does.
of sits back and he says, "Too many to count."
"Too many to count?" And she looks at you curiously. She says, "I gather that the fact that you're at a place like this at this hour means you have not had any success in getting anyone to believe your story."
And he says, "It's not a matter of whether they believe it or not. It's a matter if I can get a reaction out of them to see if they know something or not."
She says, "Oh, how intriguing." And she says, "So this monastery you speak of, it is on the road of Timria,
Mm-hmm.
off into the mountain." She says, "I think I have heard of that monastery in some old texts, mind you." She says that monastery is supposed to be very old and run down by now, surely. And she says, "I'm quite fascinated that you say that you studied there. And what exactly is it that you studied?" Now, what you studied there, especially knowing your path that you're going down, you kind of studied the elements, which is definitely, in this world, the elements is very ancient in nature, right? Like, before the coming of the gods, the elements is what people studied. I mean, the magic was always element-based, and there's just experiments and studies going on of trying to understand the elements and how to work the elements to do different things.
He mainly studied the elements and some languages.
And she says, "There's definitely some gaps, and I feel like there's more to the story that you are not telling." She says, "Perhaps you would be willing to come and dine with me and my husband on the morrow."
It's a trap.
She says, "You look like such a good boy. I believe your story, Theron."
Could I use an insight check on her to see if she has any ulterior motive to that?
Sure.
Cool. They're making bastards. What do I notice?
You're pretty sure she seems to be, well, one second. You're pretty sure that she's being sincere. Like, you're not catching that there's any hint of subterfuge, as they call it, or like deception. She actually seems like she genuinely believes you and that she wants to have a deeper discussion with you. Which, she is a prophetess of Mystra, so you're almost wondering if...
What are her colors?
I mean, if what you say is true, that was a very big crime, right?
Right.
And that there's something else going on.
She's the prophet of Mystra, right?
Yep.
And her colors aren't white and black, right? If I remember correctly, it's like...
Blue and white
blue,
and silver,
blue,
I think.
Blue and white, silver. Okay. I say, all right. I will meet you back here tomorrow, and he poses that as a question.
Okay.
Does she say yes? That was a question.
Oh, on the morrow?
Yeah, so meet back at the same place tomorrow. That's what he says.
She says, no, I will make arrangements. You can come to my house for dinner. She says, if you have no other plans, of course. I would most certainly like to hear more of your tale.
Of course. And I would, that's it. He doesn't have very good charisma, so he just says, of course, and does he leave? Is there anything else he says?
Yeah, she says, so where are you staying now?
What was the Sapphire Inn? That's what I'm staying at right now.
Yeah, I think the Blue Sapphire Inn in Tavern.
Blue Sapphire? Yeah, so I just call it the Blue Sapphire Inn with some companions.
No, the Sapphire Cup.
Oh, the Sapphire Cup with some companions.
Yep, the Sapphire Cup. And she says, well then, I will send an escort for you on the morrow. She says, I look forward to speaking with you more.
All right, and he nods, and I guess he gets up and leaves.
Okay.
Now, there's no reason why he shouldn't trust her, right, as far as his insight check was?
As far as you know, there's no she feels genuine. There's no reason for you to think anything otherwise.
Okay.
All right.
So I guess I'll just head back, and I'll
So you head back, and it's getting pretty late in the night. Deadeyes, Erlon, and Ghoul, I'm not sure what we would be doing if we would go ahead and retire to our rooms or, maybe do some gambling. I'm not sure. What would you guys be doing? It's fairly late, 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, I'm not much of a gambler. I'm just a drinker.
I'd probably be in bed.
Yeah. Ghoul definitely spending lots of time out in the wilderness surviving. He can appreciate a nice bed to sleep in, so he wants to make the most of it. And, sounding like we're going to be voyaging on a ship soon, and he's never been on a ship. So he doesn't know what to expect, but he definitely wants to be well rested. So, Theron, you get back, and there's only a few groups of people playing, a bunch of drunks playing games, and your companions seem to have been all turned in for the night. Unless Deadeyes, you're up still drinking?
Yeah, I'm in some back corner with 5 mugs of ale around me that are all empty.
Okay.
And drink away everything he saw on the island.
Yeah. Is there a raven on your shoulder still?
Yep.
Okay. So Theron, you look over, and to your surprise, you notice there's a bird on Deadeye's shoulder, and it looks like he's been just plastering himself.
Actually, the raven's actually on the table, and it looks like I'm having a conversation with it.
Okay. Yeah, so you kind of rub your eye a little bit, it's kind of, you're squinting because he's kind of in the dim light, almost like in the darkness. And you swear you see a bird on the table, and Deadeyes is talking to it.
I say, I'm going to go sit next to him, and I say, no, if you really needed someone to talk to, you could have just asked for me. Otherwise, you look mad doing it this way.
No point in hiding what you are, right?
He gives a little chuckle at that. And he motions the bard. Are there any maidens? Bar
Absolutely.
Maidens?
Yep. They're still patrons. They're trying to make as much money as they can by feeding all these drunkards even more booze if they'll take it.
Yep, he's going to drink with him then.
Alrighty. So mark off a couple silver. Barmaid comes along. You get some pretty good ale. And have a drink with them. So now, what's going through your mind right now is that Deadeyes has made us passage and that we could leave as early as even the next day, like in the morning. You basically made arrangements and agreed to have dinner with a prophetess of Mystra the next night.
Yes.
And she's going to summons you basically from this tavern. I don't know. What are you thinking? Do you think, if we really do? Yeah. So.
Say I might not be able to make the journey with them. He may have a lead to something or someone who's willing to help his cause.
Indeed. Deadeyes kind of sloshily looks over at him and says, well, I hope that pans out for you, but I'm not sure we're going to leave tomorrow. It's still up in the air a little bit.
Bitch. Let's find out when we do leave. Because now it's super important, because if that merchant does show up, during the night or whatever, and we're able to leave in the morning, Theron has a very big decision to make. Does he continue along with everyone else on something that... Now, Theron, you totally know that what we are embarking on is possibly affecting the entire kingdom. Plus, also keep in mind that the Crimson Shadow has seen us from Weaveshire anyways. That could be dangerous to be by yourself.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, your whole life mission right now is basically getting revenge on your brother's killer. And you feel like this is the best lead you've had so far, where actually someone believes your story and wants to hear the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
We'll see.
Let's find out. Oh, frick.
Oh, no. Goodbye, party.
Crap.
As early as possible.
Well, okay, so to fast forward, the morning comes. Deadeyes, you go early in the morning, right at sunrise, and you go and speak with Captain Balazar. And he is all smiles. He says, just in the night, that last merchant showed up, so we're stocking up now. We should be ready to leave in just maybe 4 hours' time, if we hurry. Says, will that be good for you?
That sounds great. It'll be good to get out on the seas again. I will let my companions know. We'll try to be here around in about 4 hours.
All right. So you get back just as we are, I guess, coming from our rooms. By the way, everyone mark another gold piece off for that last night's stay. Maybe 2 gold because you probably had some good food. Let's make it 2 gold. Okay. Yeah, so we're there just enjoying some breakfast, and Deadeyes, you come in and order some breakfast, and you sit down, and you say, what do you say?
Ship is leaving in about 4 hours.
Theron, your heart skips a beat, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, frick.
Yep.
I don't know, what do you want to do, man? Because...
Well, he doesn't know what's going to happen if he stays. He doesn't know what's going to happen if he goes. So...
Well, hold on, though. Few points to keep in mind. You were pretty sure that she was not hiding anything. In fact, you kind of got the feeling like you could trust her.
Mm-hmm.
Which, hopefully you can trust her. I mean, she's a prophet of Mystra, so she's probably not like some crazy, evil assassin or something. But she almost seemed like more like she just wanted to hear more of your story. You definitely didn't get the sense that, oh, she's hiding something, like she knows this Lyric guy.
Did I get the sense that maybe she could help?
Well, she's like the first authority figure that has actually expressed any sort of interest in your story. So possibly she might be able to maybe at least start an investigation, or maybe set things in motion to try to figure out more information. But you're not so sure that. I mean, this may not be the groundbreaking moment that you were hoping for. That, oh, I know where Lyric is now, I'm going to go kill him.
Theron has an idea.
Okay.
This is because of his awesome wisdom.
Yeah.
So he's going to go pay that ship owner a visit.
You're going to go pay Captain Balazar?
Yes.
Okay. By yourself?
He's going to ask actually Deadeyes if he could tag along.
Okay. Erlon, you notice that Theron, after Deadeyes comes in and says, we leave in 4 hours, Theron looks deeply troubled. We all can see it. And then Theron, asks Deadeyes to go with them to see Captain Balazar. So I don't know if maybe you're curious, what's going on.
So
I don't know. The dude's pretty erratic all the time anyway.
He what?
He's pretty erratic all the time anyway.
That's true.
I'm a tweaker, man.
Sleeps while in combat and does all sorts of stuff.
My only thoughts on this whole thing, and this is my personal thoughts, not my character's, but I mean, he's got to do what's true to his character. I mean, what's his character going to be more interested in? Helping us in Starport or finding his brother's killer? I mean, in reality, the biggest, most important thing to him. And what's going to give him the best option? He needs to figure that out on his own.
Yep, that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
So, Theron wants to mention something to Deadeyes if he does end up tagging along with him before we get to the ship captain.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Gola and Erlon would probably just stay back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see why I'd go.
I don't see why we would go to the docks.
That was kind of my point. I don't know that my character gets too involved. But
Okay.
I can see where his character's
there.
in conflict.
Yeah, we're just going to wait. We're going to get our stuff together and maybe go through our things, make sure we have all of our supplies in order and all that. But, yeah, so Theron and Deadeyes, you make your way to the docks, and you see the hulking mass of the spraying ogre sitting there in the water, and you aboard the ship. And Captain Balazar is there, giving orders to his crew. They're tying knots and laying rope down and going down into the cargo holds and everything. You know, doing what captains do. So he sees you two approach, and he says,
wait,
where's the others?
I wanted to mention something to Deadeyes before we got to the captain.
Okay.
Yeah. So Theron, I guess as they're walking towards the ship, the docks area, whatever, he says to Deadeyes, I need your help.
Okay. What's going on?
He says, I need you to help me persuade the captain to not leave until the next morning.
That could be difficult. It can cost a lot of money to be a day short.
Yeah.
And he says, and if you do, I will be in a major debt to you.
Yeah, and Deadeyes, you can't help but remember the image of when you first showed up in the morning and Captain Bellowsar's face was all grins and he was so happy, like, you know, almost like a kid waking up on Christmas morning.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Oh, boy.
And he says, I finally got someone to possibly help me out in my quest on looking for my brother's killer. An authority figure, I might say. And I just need to be here for one more night. And then I will serve you whatever you need for as long as the debt needs to be paid.
So what is it that you're exactly trying to do? I mean, I know your story, obviously. I've heard it a lot of times. But honestly, I am not exactly sure how you're going about trying to find this guy.
Lyric, okay. Well, the way I have been... Wait, what is he not getting?
Well,
have I not told him what I see so far?
He doesn't understand your approach to going about trying to find this Lyric guy.
Oh, yeah. My approach has been so far as to tell my story, to see if I can notice any expressions on people's face when I mention my killer's name. And that will give me a clue if they know anything about him or not. This lady, prophet of Mysticka, has seemed to give some interest in my story and could possibly help me. But all I require is this one night.
They're trying to get their fingers into everything all the time. That's not that surprising.
He says perhaps, but it's the biggest lead that I've gotten so far.
Well, it could cost the captain quite a bit of money to miss a day. I'm not exactly sure what sort of contracts he's going on. It might not be a big deal at all. He wasn't sure when he was going to be able to leave at any rate, but it might be rather difficult to convince him to stay another day. But if things do work out and you're able to come with us, I think I might have a better way for you to maybe investigate further on down the road.
If I do tag along, is that what he said? Is that what he said?
Yeah. Basically, Deadeyes has an idea that might make it easier to gauge reactions out of people.
And he says, alright, if we cannot persuade the captain into staying one more night, I will come with you anyways and trust in you. Since he's sort of fought by my side.
Okay. Well, we'll have to work on my plan later tonight then. And let's go see if we can talk him into staying.
Okay.
And you will see a smile that you will probably not see in a long time pop on Theron's face.
Okay. So
we make our way towards the dock.
Yep. You guys walk up the ramp, and I decided to change the map here off of that. So here's the ship. You can go ahead and use the measure tool and see for yourself how massive the ship is. But Yeah. So you see Captain Balazar, look and grin at you, and he says, "Oh, where's the rest of your bodyguards?"
They are still at the inn, getting ready. It turns out that, Theron here is, he's trying to find the guy that killed his brother, and he bumped into a lady last night. I think she might know something, and he's just wondering if it might be possible for you to just hang around until you can talk to this lady before we go. It might have to wait till tomorrow.
Want to roll a persuasion check?
Do it. Do it. Yes! Hell yeah!
21.
Wow.
He said, Deadeyes, is this some sort of joke? Are you mad?
It'd be better than that by now. I want to joke about set and sail.
He says, but we're already a bit behind schedule. And he says, do you know how much money I would lose? He says, Deadeyes, time is money. And he looks at Theron and he says, I feel for you, I do. And he says...
21 was...
And he says, delay in a day? He says, why?
Would it be...
Why a day? I
How
could
much
extend...
money would you...
How about a few hours?
Well, you didn't really know when you were going to leave anyway. You might have not been able to leave till tomorrow anyway. The merchant just happened to get here last night. I understand. And Deadeyes turns to Theron and he says, is there any chance you can meet with this lady sooner?
I say I wouldn't know where to find her. She only said she was going to send people to escort me at night.
And the captain says, who's sending for you?
A prophet of Mystra.
Oh, a prophetess of Mystra?
Oh yeah, sorry, prophet.
Says, well, that sounds pretty important. And he lets out a big, long sigh. And he's just shaking his head. And he says, Deadeyes makes a good point. He says, perhaps to appease myself, I'll have to pretend that the merchant didn't show up early. And he just seems to kind of kick the deck a little bit. He's a little bit disgruntled. But, that was very persuasive. So...
Deadeyes clasps him on the shoulder and says, you're a good man, Captain Balthazar.
And he says, a good man who's not going to make as much money. And he says, then we leave at sunrise on the morrow, not an hour later.
Sounds good to me.
Yep.
All right. So,
Cool.
yeah, so we go back to the something Sapphire.
Sapphire Cup.
Yeah, the Sapphire Cup. And we're getting our things together. And, Ghoul says, we're almost ready. And Theron has a big smile on his face.
And yep. And
Ghoul says, what's wrong with you?
We've been delayed until tomorrow morning at sunrise. And he's happy about it.
And Ghoul says, but I thought the last merchant arrived last night.
Well, he's happy about it because there's a lady who wants to talk to him about his dead brother.
And you see Ghoul just look kind of disappointed. He's like, Says, so, Theron, you going to pay for my room for the night?
Costing us time and money.
Yep.
Well, he says, depends. The next time we capture someone alive, you're going to let me question them?
He just grunts and walks away.
It's not worth the money to him.
Yeah, he would rather pay another 2 gold and have the right to kill someone when he wants. Okay. So, I guess everyone mark off another 2 gold since we have to stay another night. Well, at least we're eating well.
Yep.
Okay. So evening approaches. I guess most of us will probably be in the main great room and listening to some fine bard music. And suddenly the doors to the inn opens, and in walks 3 men wearing chainmail armor, and of course they're adorned with weapons and whatnot, but they have these cloaks on, and they have right emblazoned on their chest the symbol of Mystra, right on their chest. And one of them steps out, and of course everybody goes kind of quiet, and the lead man steps up and kind of has this wavy hair going on, and he just calls out, what was your last name again, Theron?
Everlast.
Theron Everlast. Theron Everlast, Lady Soraya seeks audience. Theron Everlast.
Wow.
And you stand up. And Deadeyes, you did not know her name, this prophetess of Mystra, because Theron never knew her name. He never asked. But you have heard of Soraya, the prophetess of Mystra. And she's like one of the more prominent figures in Blueport. She's definitely, she manages a lot of the affairs, a lot of the important, contracts between the, trade goods ships and everything, like the whole economy. Like, she's pretty much in charge of it. So definitely a big deal. And you're just kind of thinking, what, Soraya? Like, wow, that's impressive, But yeah, Theron, you stand up, and you're wearing your new shirt that you went out and bought, right?
My new robe, yep.
Yeah, your new robe. And yeah, and the lead man with the wavy hair, he nods at you as you come up, and they exit through, and they say, "Follow us, please." And we lose sight of Theron.
Right
And
on.
Theron, you walk with these men, what seems like just forever, and you're going up the slope part of the city, and you can look up and you can tell that this is like the upper district of Blueport. Kind of the more poorer district is more closer to, towards the docks and the lower area. But this upper area, which just more overlooks the whole harbor and everything, is definitely more the richer side. And that is the area that these men are taking you to. And these men they're not speaking with you at all. They don't care to ask you anything. They're not even talking to you. It's just a completely awkward silence as they are walking.
That's completely fine.
Now I want you to make a surprise check. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, you eventually get up to this home, well, more of like a mansion. This bricked home is probably double the size of the Sapphire Cup. And it's just very ornate, very nice. In addition, you see water coming out of these fountains, just never ending, just coming out, but the water is going into like this small little basin, but it's not even overflowing. You see on the tips, there's these spires that go up, and they seem like they're sparkling in the remains of the sunlight. The sun's starting to set, it's approaching evening, but the sun's going on its way down, but the sun is definitely glistening off of these spires, and they just seem to be just cascading this like mystical look about them, almost like, you know, what we would call glitter, but it's more shimmery, and you can't help but kind of stare at it for a little bit because it's just so amazing to look at. And then you hear one of them say, "Well, are you coming?" And you realize that you'd been staring at those spires, and the door is already open, and one of these men is just like kind of motioning you onwards to enter. And you enter. Now,
I never returned.
here's the thing. I think we should stop here.
Oh,
Because,
really?
yeah, because it's 11:30. I did not plan on this happening. And I kind of need to figure out a bit more in depth exactly how far she intends to go to help you.
Right.
Yeah, this was just unexpected, but definitely cool. Very, very cool. And we don't have time for the encounter I had planned anyways. Not even close. So that means next time we play, we can just pick right up off on this and then go into that encounter, you know, basically set sail. So
Still can't believe it worked.
neither can I. Like, what was that, a 19 that you rolled?
18.
Or no, a 21, though. 21 total.
Yeah, 21, uh-huh.
Amazing roll. I can't believe that you convinced Captain Balazar to delay.
That was like impossible.
Oh, you did it, though, and now there's going to be...
I thought Theron was leaving the group right now.
That's kind of what I
Yeah.
thought.
Me too.
I mean, I wouldn't. His character would want to get this information.
Yeah,
He'd want
'cause-
to do this.
Yep.
Theron doesn't have a big tie-in with the rest of us, you know. I mean,
No.
he has his own quest for vengeance, and nothing's going to stand in his
Yep.
way.
Yeah.
Unless they kill me.
But I'm actually really glad you rolled the 19, Deadeyes, or, you know, the 21.
Yeah. It's so
So,
Well, it kept the group together at least.
and you know what? What was fun about this is we had, and we occasionally have these, where we have a session just full of roleplay and dialogue and story, and not a single combat encounter.
funny.
No, it was good.
But that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yep.